Hello, Bible readers. In the last post, I started talking about John's seventh vision of the end, the New Jerusalem. This is the vision John has saved to the end of his tour of pictures. And although it does not necessarily connect or completely make sense next to the other six visions, the detail and the breadth of description for this vision make it feel weightier than the third vision, for example, where Satan is bound up. Also completely legitimate in its own right, but this deserves more of our attention, is my point. So as we survey this seventh vision, as we look around this New Jerusalem and see in the end God, and we see that there is no sea, no tears, no death, no cowards, no liars, no temple, no sun, no moon, no night, as we see a city, a particular city, Jerusalem, a renewed city that is big and inclusive, a holy city. What does it all mean? That's what today's post and tomorrow's are going to be about. First thing, God does not merely bring the end. God says God is the end. I am the Alpha, that is the beginning, and Omega, the end. Verses 15 and 16 of chapter 21 may seem odd. Like, what do we care about the measurements of this place? Well, like everything in this letter, though, it means something important. The golden city is a perfect cube, same as what the Holy of Holies was, within the temple where the divine presence was intimately made available. Again, people in John's audience would have known this. This would have made sense to them immediately. The Holy of Holies is why, and that this is a perfect cube. This is why there is no temple in the New Jerusalem. This divine presence intimately made available is already in, with, under, around. It is the presence of God unto itself, is what John is trying to say. So in chapter 22, verse 4, John tells us that they will see his face. Well, even Moses only got to see God's backside. Check out my deep dive into Exodus to hear more about that one. So this New Jerusalem level of communion with God is indeed new. What awaits the believer in the world at the end of all things? John would simply say, God. So what do you say about God if you're John? Turns out, not much. He understands the limits any human is under when trying to describe the indescribable. So a primary tool he uses to get at what God is to talk about what the New Jerusalem is not. For example, there is no sea. Now, for those of us who love the ocean and can't imagine an eternal life without it, don't forget, John is not reporting on an actual, literal place. John is crafting images and pictures meant to direct our hopes toward truth, toward life, toward God. For him, the sea is what separates John from his beloved churches in Asia. He's literally on an island. So John could have said, all barriers to human relationships will be no more. And for others, actually many more, in the traditions of John's people, the sea was understood to be the source of chaos. In lots of myths and stories, it was from the sea that the dragon would come. And if evil is no more, then the sea will be no more. What God is hard to explain, maybe impossible to explain. But again, John does so often by saying what the New Jerusalem is not. There will not be tears, death, sorrow, crying, pain. These are things that steal from life, from fulfillment, joy, vibrant life. They remain less than in a world with death and sorrow and pain. What else is not there? There will be no cowardly, faithless, polluted, murderers, fornicators, sorcerers, idolaters, or liars. In other words, this is a place where everyone is safe, where justice prevails all the time for everybody. Notice that John does not say If you've ever been cowardly, if you've ever been faithless, or all the things, then you don't get to be there. He simply says those things don't happen there. So liars, you don't get to bring your lies with you. So to get at what this place is, we hear a lot about what it's not, but we also get to hear what the city itself is. First of all, we might be surprised that what John sees is a city at all. Like, some of us would rather the vision of the end be an endless field, right? Quiet and beautiful with nobody else around, thank you. Lots of rural people think of a city as the place where human evil gets concentrated. But John doesn't write his letter to people who no longer go to church, who only take walks on the weekend. He doesn't write his letter to those who have retreated to their own private spirituality. He doesn't write to groups of Christians who are in retreat centers. He writes to churches in 7 large for their time cities. And that's on purpose. Professor Eugene Boring says, a city is a realization of human community, the concrete living out of interdependence as the essential nature of human life. Americans struggle with this, especially suburban or rural types like me. In the individualistic ideal, each person is independent, self-reliant, does everything for their self, almost like I'm my own little god. In a city, tasks get divided up more and everybody does their own part, contributes toward a whole. Well, Boring says the beauty of life in a city is not a solo, but a symphony. As community, a city is not streets or buildings, but people. So this made me think of Mr. Rogers' idea of community. I think Mr. Rogers could have been John of Patmos for sure. Okay, so it is a city of all things, and it is a particular city, a city that already exists, Jerusalem. So what does that mean? Well, the God revealed through Jesus on the cross has history with no other city more than Jerusalem. So to make the point that God is not interested in breaking off the earthly story that's been written thus far, God here, according to John, continues the old story with a renewed Jerusalem. God doesn't ball up the old creation and throw it away. God renews the old creation, brings fulfillment to it. Boring says, God does not make all new things. God makes all things new. And that is a big deal, right? Some people hope for this end where human civilization can finally just be destroyed already, forgotten about, and we can be brought back to Eden, as though none of this human history ever happened, as if it had all been bad, as though humanity has only been bad. Telling the story of history that way does not honor God the Creator, who created it good, created us very good. John specifically does not provide a picture of the end, where all is forgotten and we return to Eden to start over. Salvation will not be an escape from the tragedy of human existence. It will provide a transformation of human existence. Boring says, salvation is beyond, but not without, this world. So it's not like the only things that survive into this New Jerusalem are religious, pious deeds and words. This is the place where every effort throughout all of history to love, to gain justice, to serve the neighbor are actualized. In chapter 19, verse 8, it said, the bride city is clothed with the righteous deeds of the saints. Boring says, so every ditch dug, every brick laid, every vote cast, every committee decision that's contributed to the decency of human life, it's all preserved there. And yet, the city is not a human achievement. It is a gift from God. A temptation that John would have had, a temptation of any marginal minority, like John and his churches are, would have been to claim that there's going to be some great reversal where only a few, like themselves, we're going to get to be in this renewed grace place. But John doesn't give in to that temptation. He doesn't go there. And so I'm going to finish my conversation about the New Jerusalem in my next post, where I hope you'll hear about how inclusive John is and how holy the city is, and how the vision ends. I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us, at all times and in all places.